Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin.
Some eyes open like secrets. Not all eyes are made for the noonday sun. Some prefer the hush of mossy groves and forest floors soaked in starlight. Evolution, ever the patient sculptor, has molded pupils to bloom in the dark, to widen, soften, and sip the quiet photons that most creatures never see. In those dim-lit hours when shadows stretch long and still, something magical happens. The world doesn't disappear, it transforms. There is a kind of light that belongs only to the night, and some eyes are tuned gently to its lullaby. You've seen it before, the slow dilation of a cat's eyes as twilight slips in through the windows, their gaze blooming like dark petals. You felt the shift too, when your own eyes stumble into a dim room and must drink in the dusk slowly, adjusting not by command but by instinct carried through millennia. Pupils, round and clever, stretch wider in the dark not just to see, but to remember. Because deep in the ancestry of every creature that sees the night, there was a time when survival meant hearing a twig snap, and also seeing the glint of fur just before the pounce. Let's drift gently into this. In the animal world, the pupil's shape is a soft signature of evolution strategy. The vertical slits of a fox or a gecko, they are precision instruments. When light is scarce, these slits widen into generous ovals, offering the retina a flood of photons. In contrast, the round pupils of owls or humans serve a different rhythm, blooming slower, capturing enough but never too much. And then there are goats and sheep, with horizontal pupils adapted not for the night, but for scanning wide, flat fields while predators lurk. The night, you see, doesn't just favor one kind of sight. It asks each eye to solve a different riddle. The retina waits behind the pupil like a dark field, seeded with cells that hunger for light. Rods and cones, those tiny messengers of clarity and color, wait in stillness. Rods especially are the night's companions. They don't care much for color, but they whisper gently in grayscale, capturing light that's 1,000 times dimmer than what cones require. In the depths of your own eye, over 100 million rods rest quietly, waiting to wake when the light falls away. Some creatures have taken this further. The tarsier, small and trembling in the jungles of Southeast Asia, has eyes so large they cannot even move in their sockets. Each eye is nearly as big as its brain. And why? Because it hunts at night. Because every shimmer of movement matters. Because it has inherited a world not lit by lamps but by starlight filtered through leaves. And so its pupils bloom like full moons, open, unblinking, hungry. Even in us there remains a trace of this nighttime longing. When we walk into a forest at dusk, our eyes shift gradually, the pupil dilating in subtle response. It is not a conscious act. We don't will our eyes to widen. The autonomic nervous system, ancient and soft-spoken, handles this transition, a hush behind the scenes, as if the body remembers long nights spent under stars, watching, waiting. There's a soft elegance in how quickly the pupil changes. In bright light, it constricts in under a second like a sudden breath inward. In darkness, it opens more slowly over minutes like a long sigh. This isn't just biology, it's poetry written in adaptation. In a way, the eyes know to take their time in darkness. They know not to rush the night. And just beneath this dance, the brain is listening. Signals from the retina move along the optic nerve, flowing like rivers of shadow to the midbrain, to the superior colliculus and lateral geniculate nucleus. These are regions that handle motion and image, contrast and edge, the rough outlines of what might be there. But in the dark, outlines are sometimes all we have. And still, it's enough. A flicker, a shape, a suggestion of movement, this is what the night teaches us to see. Now imagine the moth, fluttering under moonlight, its eyes wide and textured like velvet, capable of detecting ultraviolet hues we cannot imagine. Or the frog peering from a still pond, its round eyes gleaming like glass marbles, soaking up even the faintest shimmer of reflected sky. Each of these animals carries a different kind of seeing. Each tells a story of how vision, far from being one single gift, is 100 quiet adaptations to a world that keeps changing with the turning of the sun. The pupil's such a small thing, really, but it tells the whole story. It reveals where an animal comes from, what it fears, what it hunts, what hunts it. It speaks of deserts or forests or caves, of stillness or sprint. When it widens, the world becomes more mysterious. And sometimes that's when life feels closest. So the next time you sit in the quiet dark and feel your eyes adjusting, think of it not as a limitation, but as a returning. You are rejoining a lineage of night walkers, of stargazers, of watchers in the shadows. The blooming of your pupils is not a loss of light. It's an invitation to another kind of seeing. One where the soft edges speak louder than shapes, and where darkness is not empty but full of subtle stories. The night, after all, was our first classroom, and the eyes that bloom within it still remember the lessons whispered in the dark. Now imagine drifting deeper into the heart of darkness, where not all vision comes from the eye alone. For in the gentle world of the night, light is precious, and the body learns to listen in new ways. Eyes adapt, yes, but so do minds. In the hush of nocturnal life, everything becomes more sensitive: the flicker of a movement, the shadow of a leaf swaying, the gleam of an eye watching in return. It is here, in this shared quiet, that biology and environment become intertwined, and the language of night vision becomes something deeper than seeing. It becomes knowing. Across the forests and grasslands and desert sands, creatures have evolved to thrive in these low-light realms. They are not fighting the dark, they are flowing with it. Take the lemur, for instance, with its enormous reflective eyes that shine like lanterns in camera flashes. The glow isn't from the eye itself, but from a soft mirror behind the retina called the tapetum lucidum. This shimmering layer sends light back through the retina a second time, giving the cells another chance to capture what was nearly lost. It's like handing a whisper back to a sleeping ear, letting it be heard just once more. The tapetum is nature's way of saying, even faint light is a treasure. Found in cats, dogs, deer, raccoons, and many other night dwellers, this adaptation makes their eyes glow in the dark when caught in headlights or moonbeams. But it's more than a curious glimmer, it's a message from evolution that nothing is wasted. Every photon matters. And so, vision becomes a story of recycling light, of honoring what little there is. In this same quiet language, the shape of the eye itself transforms. In deep-sea fish, for instance, eyes grow to enormous sizes relative to their heads, peering through blue-black waters where sunlight barely trickles. Some have layered retinas or overlapping visual fields, intricate geometries crafted not by design, but by necessity. And above the sea, in the open deserts, animals like the fennec fox develop oversized ears and large, dark eyes, pairing hearing and vision into a duet of perception. In the night, no sense travels alone. But night vision is not only about eyes, it's about time. Evolution plays a long game. The ability to see in the dark isn't simply flipped on or off, it is shaped over generations, molded by pressure, by failure, by slow and patient chance. Those whose eyes better suited the dusk found more food, avoided more danger, raised more young. And so, through hundreds of thousands of nights, nature's brush painted pupils to bloom wider, retinas to grow denser, and circuits in the brain to prioritize contrast over clarity, movement over detail. Even plants, though they do not see in our way, feel the rhythm of light and dark. Some flowers close their petals at dusk, while others open to greet the moon, like the night-blooming cereus, a cactus flower that waits in silence all year for one brief nocturnal bloom. Its timing is so exact, so tender, that it invites only moths or bats that happen to be watching the same piece of sky. There is sight here, too, though not in eyes, a kind of vision built from sensitivity to rhythm, temperature, scent, and time. But let's return to the animals who rely on true night vision, for their stories are the most intricate. Owls, the silent hunters, fly with wings shaped to muffle sound, and eyes so large they cannot move within the skull. Instead, they turn their entire heads, up to 270 degrees, scanning the dark with a gaze that is both ancient and exact. Their retinas are densely packed with rods, those low-light receptors, and their brains are wired to map what they see in almost total silence. They don't need color, they need movement, shadow, edge. In contrast, some snakes, like the pit viper, sense infrared radiation, adding an entirely different layer of perception to their nighttime world. They don't just see what reflects light, they see what gives it off. A mouse scurrying across the ground glows like an ember to their heat-sensitive pits. This is not night vision in the traditional sense. It's something older, something elemental, a blending of vision and temperature, of light and heat. The night, in this way, becomes visible not just to the eye, but to the skin. Even among humans, there is variation. Some people naturally see better in the dark, not just because of better rod density, but due to neural efficiency, less internal noise, and better contrast detection. We all adjust to the dark, of course, but the process, called dark adaptation, can take up to 30 minutes. It begins with the dilation of the pupil, yes, but continues with the slow accumulation of a molecule called rhodopsin, or visual purple. It is this chemical that makes rods sensitive to low light, and in bright conditions, it's broken down rapidly. Only in darkness can it build back up, molecule by molecule, like dew forming on morning grass. That's why a flashlight ruins your night vision. It floods the eye with photons, breaking down the rhodopsin and forcing the system to reset. In some traditions, red light is used instead, gentle enough to preserve night vision while still offering enough glow to read a map or follow a trail. Here again, nature teaches, not all light is equal. Some light soothes, some light steals. In the quiet of the night, even our brains process visual information differently. The parts of the brain that analyze color and fine detail quiet down. The ones that detect shape and motion become more active. We become more sensitive to motion at the edges of our vision, more attuned to suggestion than clarity. The world becomes less about what is, and more about what asterisk might asterisk be. And yet this has its own kind of beauty. There is something soft and ancient in the way darkness slows us down. When vision narrows, attention widens. You hear more, you feel more. Your footsteps soften, your breathing deepens, and your eyes, no longer flooded with harsh light, begin to bloom inward, into memory, into imagination, into an older way of knowing. So as we move through the dark, in forests, in bedrooms, in open fields beneath stars, we are not becoming blind. We are becoming attuned. The pupil blooms, the rods awaken, and the brain steps into a quieter rhythm. We are returning, again and again, to that evolutionary love letter written in every widening eye: trust the night. It has always been watching. And now, as we settle deeper into the quiet folds of the night, we arrive at the gentle truth behind it all. Seeing in the dark is not merely a function of biology. It is an ancient gesture of intimacy with the unknown. The night has never promised clarity. It offers instead a kind of trust. The trust that something will reveal itself not all at once, but slowly, in layers, in soft unfolding. And so the eye blooms wider, not out of fear, but out of quiet readiness, a signal that we are willing to perceive even what hides. Many of the animals who thrive in darkness are not only shaped by night, but shaped for asterisk it. Think of the eye in Madagascar, tapping wood with its long finger and listening with enormous ears, its large eyes peering through the undergrowth like ancient moons. Or the oilbird of South America, who lives in caves and navigates by echolocation, yet still retains vision adapted for total darkness, a hybrid of sound and shadow, crafted for a life in liminal places. These beings are not anomalies. They are the natural result of evolution's patience. They are what happens when light is not guaranteed. There's a tenderness in how evolution provides for the night. Not all creatures compete with it. Some surrender, some embrace. The blind cave fish, for example, has lost its eyes entirely, a stark reminder that when vision becomes irrelevant, the body lets it go. But in return, it sharpens other senses. It feels the movement of water. It senses vibration. It maps the world not with images, but with presence. It does not mourn the loss of sight. It simply evolves beyond it. And yet we humans have never fully surrendered to darkness. We lit fires. We made lamps. We built cities that glow so brightly they obscure the stars themselves. In doing so, we have forgotten the slow gift of letting the eye adjust, of trusting our vision to soften into the dark. But something deep within us remembers. That's why candlelight feels calming. Why a campfire draws our gaze. Why the stars, when finally visible, feel like old friends. These are echoes, echoes of a time when night was not feared but known. Even today, when the lights go out, we experience a quiet transformation. First, discomfort, the eyes straining, the heart hesitating, but then slowly acceptance. Shapes return, shadows take on form, and we realize the dark is not empty. It is just unfamiliar light. It holds the same world, only rearranged in softness. Science has measured the ways we see at night, has cataloged the chemicals and neurons, has described the adaptive advantages, but it cannot fully capture the experience. The hush, the listening, the way the pupil widens not just to take in light but to let in wonder, because that's what night vision is in the end, not just seeing with less light but seeing with more openness. And perhaps this is why dreams feel so natural in the dark. The mind, unburdened by visual noise, begins to paint its own images. The brain is not idle when the eyes close, it continues the act of seeing, but now inward. Rods and cones rest, but imagination ignites. Night vision is not just biological, it is metaphysical. It bridges the visible and the invisible. It invites a softness that the daylight rarely allows. So let us return once more to those blooming pupils, those black petals that open silently, moment by moment. They are not simply mechanical. They are expressions of ancient lineage, of stories etched in DNA, of 1,000 generations who watched and waited and walked in moonlight. They are gifts from ancestors who navigated forests and fields by starlight, who learned to trust what they could only partially see. There is something humbling in this, something reverent, because in the dark, vision becomes a shared act between the eyes, the brain, and the environment. The light must come from somewhere. The perception must make meaning from so little. And the darkness must be accepted, not conquered. Night vision teaches us quietly to let go of control, to see not everything but enough, to appreciate shadow as part of the shape and silence as part of the sound. Even now, as you sit in dimness, your pupils may be wider than you think. Your body, whether you notice it or not, is listening to the light. Your brain is tuning its senses, softening its signals. You are adapting gracefully, automatically, tenderly to the rhythm of darkness. This is not a failure of vision. It is its most delicate form. So let it be dark. Let it stay quiet. Let your eyes bloom like midnight flowers, gentle and wide. Let the shadows stretch and fold. And trust that even here in this soft and hidden world there is beauty, there is meaning, there is light enough. There is a kind of light we cannot see. It moves around us like breath, like a warm fog pressed gently against our skin, always there, always moving, always invisible. This light is not for the eyes we were born with. It belongs to another realm, softer, longer, deeper. It is the light of heat, the language of warmth, the spectrum of the unseen, infrared. And though we do not see it, many creatures do. They live in a world painted not in color but in temperature. And when the moon rises, even this invisible world begins to shimmer. Infrared light is longer in wavelength than red, stretching just past the borders of human perception. While we bask in sunlight's visible spectrum, the reds, oranges, greens, and blues, the world is also glowing in other ways, whispering a warmth that we cannot detect, but that snakes and beetles and bats can read like scripture. It is not fiction. It is physics. Everything that has warmth, every stone, every breath, every living cell emits infrared. It is the glow of life itself, humming silently from every surface. Now imagine a forest at night. To us, it is a quilt of shadows, but to the creatures of infrared, it is a glowing map of motion and meaning. The mouse, warm and scurrying, leaves a trace. The owl, cool and still, is a gap in the pattern. The tree trunks radiate stored heat from the day, glowing faintly. Even your own hand, held out in the air, would appear as a flickering flame to a creature that sees in thermal. They do not need the sun to navigate. They follow the heat that never sleeps. The pit viper carries two eyes on either side of its head like most snakes, but just below those, nestled between the eye and the nostril, lies something stranger, a pit. Not an eye, not quite a nose, but a cavity lined with temperature-sensitive membranes. This is its second sight. Infrared radiation enters the pit and strikes the delicate tissue, warming it slightly. And in that warmth, an image is formed not of light, but of temperature gradients. The snake sees a glowing mouse in complete darkness. It sees heat the way we see shape. And this vision is so precise, it can strike with accuracy in total absence of light. Other creatures have found different paths. Fire beetles, who lay their eggs in burning wood, have sensors that detect infrared from miles away. Vampire bats, tiny and warm-blooded, use heat-sensitive facial pits to locate blood-rich vessels near the surface of an animal's skin. These adaptations do not replace ordinary vision, they expand it. They create a second reality layered beneath the first, a tapestry of warmth beneath the color. And though we cannot see this world with naked eyes, we have built tools to help us. Infrared cameras, thermal goggles, satellites that map Earth's heat. When we look through them, the world changes. Cold rivers become black ink, hot stones become lanterns. A person walking becomes a silhouette of fire. We begin to understand what the night-born already know, that the world is never truly dark. It is always glowing, just not always in ways we can see. There is poetry in this, in knowing that the moonlight we admire is only part of the story. The moon itself reflects sunlight, mostly invisible light, yes, but also in infrared. The ground absorbs it, the rocks hold it, and even hours after the sun has disappeared, the earth continues to breathe out warmth into the air. Some of it rises, some lingers in valleys, and some is caught in the wide-open eyes of creatures evolved to read that fading glow. Infrared is also a storyteller of the cosmos. Astronomers use infrared telescopes to see stars hidden behind clouds of dust. Where visible light is blocked, infrared slips through. And so we glimpse newborn galaxies, ancient red giants drifting nebulae, all glowing in wavelengths that fall gently beneath what our eyes can grasp. The universe, it turns out, is fluent in infrared. It is one of its oldest languages. Even our own bodies sing in this invisible light. Every breath we exhale, every muscle that stirs, every heartbeat, every moment of warmth, all of it radiates outward in soft infrared hums. To a thermal camera, we are radiant beings. To a pit viper, we are constellations of heat. And though we do not feel this energy leave us, it is always flowing like a tide, like a soft murmur of presence. There is something humbling in this idea, that we are always visible even in darkness. That something somewhere could find us not by shape, but by the warmth we carry. And there is something comforting too, that even without light the body glows. That life leaves a signature behind, a trace, a warmth that speaks silently of our being. And so when the moon rises over a quiet field, it may seem pale, distant, cold. But to those who see in infrared, it is enough. The stones shimmer, the soil breathes, the leaves hold the last warmth of day. The world glows softly, and every creature who moves through this world does so not by what is visible, but by what is real. This is the truth of infrared. It reveals the truth that color hides. It reminds us that seeing is never just about light. It is about what we notice, what we miss, and what other lives have been quietly reading all along. The night does not conceal. It only changes the terms of vision. And those who have learned its language walk through it with confidence, painting their paths not with torches but with warmth. Let's drift deeper now, into the warmth beneath the night, where seeing becomes something more than sight. Imagine standing in a darkened forest long after the sun has set. The leaves no longer shine. The colors have dimmed. The world to your eyes seems to have gone to sleep. But if you could see with a different kind of vision, if you could see in the language of heat, you would witness a different story. The squirrel curled in its nest glows faintly. The deer stepping softly across the clearing radiates a living light. Even the soil, warmed by the long hours of sun, releases its heat like an exhale into the cool night air. This hidden warmth, this continuous silent energy, is what the creatures of the night depend on. For them, the end of daylight does not mean blindness. It means a shift, a transition into another spectrum, one where warmth replaces color and movement replaces detail. It is a softer world, one of gradients and edges, where the outline of life shimmers gently in the darkness. The way this is achieved is both ancient and elegant. Pit vipers and vampire bats do not see heat the way we understand vision. Their receptors do not form clear pictures like our eyes do with light. Instead, they detect slight differences in temperature, a fraction of a degree, and build a mental image from that contrast. The warmer the object, the brighter it feels. The colder the air, the clearer the shapes. It is less like looking and more like sensing, like the body reaching out through space to feel a warm shape pass by. This kind of perception is not limited to predators. Some insects, like the jewel beetle, are drawn to forest fires. Their heat-sensitive organs allow them to detect smoldering wood from distances as great as a kilometer. To them, fire is not danger, it is opportunity. Burned trees offer places to lay eggs, free from competition. Their lives depend on seeing what others flee from, and so they ride heat like a compass, moving toward it with silent purpose. In the ocean depths, the rules are different again. Water absorbs infrared quickly, so most marine creatures have evolved away from using it as a guide. But on land, where heat clings to surfaces and lingers in the air, it becomes a reliable trail. Mammals, especially, radiate warmth constantly. Warm-blooded bodies are always glowing, always sending soft signals out into the night. This is why predators who hunt in the dark often rely on heat. It never lies. It cannot be hidden with camouflage. You can change your color, but not your temperature. Humans have always been curious about this hidden spectrum. Long before we could measure it, we felt it. We stood near fires and knew warmth traveled through the air, even when no light touched our skin. We felt the heat of another person's body in the dark. We sensed the sun's presence long after it had dipped below the horizon. Only later did we name it infrared and begin to understand its role. In the 1800s, astronomers first discovered infrared when they used a prism to separate sunlight and placed a thermometer just beyond the red end of the spectrum. The thermometer rose. Something invisible was there, carrying energy. And from that moment on, a new world began to unfold, one where we realized that light was not a narrow band but a wide river. We saw how much we had been missing. Today, we use infrared in medicine, in industry, and space exploration. We map forests and city streets with thermal imaging. We monitor the health of engines, the warmth of bodies, the breath of Earth itself. Satellites orbit silently above us, reading the planet's heat like a heartbeat. They tell us where the oceans are warming, where the ice is thinning, where cities sleep too hot beneath blankets of asphalt and steel. And as they read the warmth, they also tell stories of life, of change, of presence. In animals, the ability to see heat is not just practical, it is intimate. A mother snake curling around her eggs senses their warmth. A bat flying past cattle knows which animal is asleep, which is restless. A predator reads not only the location of its prey, but its size, its motion, even its fear, all translated into patterns of heat. And in us too, this perception has echoes. Though we lack true infrared vision, our skin responds to warmth. We know the presence of another without needing to look. We feel the sunlight on our backs, the fire on our hands, the body beside us in the night. These sensations are not distant from seeing. They are siblings. They remind us that not all perception begins with the eye. Sometimes it begins with the skin, with the breath, with the warmth that touches us without sound. Infrared light also connects us to cycles larger than ourselves. It is the quiet trace of the sun, passed from stone to soil to seed. It is the memory of daylight, stored in sand and brick and tree bark. At dusk, as visible light fades, infrared remains. It lingers in the world like a final whisper, a long goodbye. And this is what the moon reveals when it rises, not by shining its own light, but by reflecting what remains, by softening the edges and letting the warmth speak. And so the creatures of the night do not fear the dark. They know it still holds light, just in a gentler form. And as we begin to understand this ourselves, we are invited into a deeper kind of awareness, one where seeing is not about brightness, but about sensitivity, where the invisible becomes a companion, and where warmth becomes a kind of quiet beacon in the vastness of the night. Now let the night grow still around you. The air cools. The stars shimmer with quiet certainty. But even as the light fades from the sky, the warmth of the day lingers not in color or shadow, but in waves of invisible softness. The world glows in silence, and those who can see this hidden radiance move with purpose, clarity, and grace. They do not need light to see. They only need heat. And in this final journey through the infrared, we begin to understand that true vision sometimes means learning to notice what has always been there. The moon, hanging pale in the sky, has no light of its own. It borrows from the sun, reflecting silver-blue glimmers across valleys, rooftops, and rivers. But it also reflects warmth, and even in its quiet glow, it stirs the air. The rocks beneath you, the bark of nearby trees, even your fingertips pressed to the ground, they all retain the day's heat. They release it slowly, generously, like steam from a hidden spring. And in this soft release, creatures with heat-sensitive eyes trace the world not by outlines, but by breath. In some places, this kind of vision is not an advantage, it is survival. In deserts where the day sears and the night chills quickly, infrared helps predators locate prey that seek warmth beneath sand. In forests thick with leaves and secrets, it helps hunters find small mammals moving softly in underbrush. And in the grasslands where the wind carries scents and rustles, it offers certainty. That shape in the tall grass is warm. That stillness has a heartbeat. We may never see the world as a pit viper does, but in our hands we now carry the tools to glimpse it. Thermal cameras render heat as colors: oranges, purples, pinks. They give shape to the invisible, but even these bright renderings are just interpretations. For the creatures born into this way of seeing, it is simpler than that. It is not art, it is instinct. They do not need to translate. They simply know that spot is warm, that place is alive. And what is warmth really but the signature of energy, of life in motion? Every warm body is a signal, a story, a moment in the continuum. When a mouse runs through leaves, it leaves behind a trail not just of sound but of heat. When a bird lands on a branch, the spot where its feet touched glows briefly. When a person walks through a room, their heat lingers in the air like perfume. To eyes that see infrared, these traces are not ghosts. They are confirmations that something passed here, that life is close. It makes you wonder how differently the world might feel if we could see these things too. If we could look at each other and see more than faces. If we could see the warmth of someone's chest, the trail of their steps, the glow of their laughter as something real. Perhaps we would feel more connected. Perhaps we would understand that we are all, in some way, radiating something into the dark. And yet perhaps we already do, not with eyes but with other senses. We feel when someone stands near us. We sense warmth before contact. We know when a room has just been left. These small intuitions, they are not magic. They are echoes of what other animals perceive more clearly. We live among them, sharing the same space, but they walk a slightly different path, guided by light we cannot see. The moon continues its arc, its glow shifts, its shadows stretch. But below that quiet dance, the earth still radiates. The heat of a day's memories seeps from concrete and soil. Buildings breathe warmth into the sky. Roads shimmer faintly. And the animals who live by temperature, they read it all like a book, never needing a lamp. Their world is woven with gradients, a warmth here, a coolness there, a body still and small, a predator still and silent. In this vision, nothing is truly hidden. Even if a creature stops moving, its warmth betrays it. Even if it camouflages, the heat slips through. The predator knows. The night reveals. But this way of seeing is not only for hunting. It is also for belonging. Bats seek warmth to rest in. Reptiles bask in heat retained by rocks. Insects move toward heat to feed or to hide. Every living thing, from the smallest beetle to the largest mammal, makes choices guided by warmth. And in those choices lies a quiet intelligence, a way of moving through the world not by what can be seen, but by what can be felt. There's a lesson here, soft and slow. That seeing is not just about clarity, it is about attention. The world gives off countless signals: light, sound, scent, heat. We catch only a few, but even those few are enough to build a life. The creatures who see in infrared do not need perfection. They only need patterns, movement, warmth. They listen to the unspoken story the earth tells each night. So as you lie beneath the stars, as the air grows cooler and the hush of the night thickens, remember, there is still light here. Not the kind your eyes can see, but the kind your skin might feel, the kind the earth breathes slowly from its surface. The moon does not paint in colors. It paints in warmth. And the creatures who follow that warmth, they are not blind. They are simply tuned to a different melody. And so are we in small ways. We feel warmth on our backs. We huddle near fires. We cherish the glow of another's touch. These are our versions of infrared, our echoes of an ancient sensing. The world is never dark. It is always lit by something, even if we cannot see it. Let this be the closing whisper of the night's lesson. The unseen is not the unreal. The world glows gently always. In every stone, every body, every breath there is warmth. And where there is warmth, there is life. And where there is life, something is always watching, not with fear, but with quiet knowing. Seeing not the color of your skin, not the light in your eyes, but the glow of your being. You are never lost in the dark. You are always glowing. There is a kind of vision that does not need light. It is drawn not from the eyes, but from the mouth and ears, a kind of seeing made of echoes. In the darkened caverns of the earth, under the canopy of moonless forests, and through the vast open sky of night, some creatures have found another way to know the world. They do not wait for light to reveal what lies ahead. They send out sound, and the world answers. In that answer, in that whispering return of a wave, is the shape of everything. This is echolocation, a quiet architecture built not of bricks or beams, but of time, space, and sound. Bats were among the first to master this art. In darkness, they emit high-pitched calls too high for most human ears to hear and wait for those calls to bounce back. From the tiniest delay in echo, they learn distance. From the texture of return, they sense softness, motion, size. A moth fluttering among leaves becomes a glowing shape in their minds. A branch ahead, a wall, a field of flying insects, all become visible not through sight but through returning song. It is a kind of painting done with vibrations, a scanning of the world in pulses of sound. And they are precise. So precise that a bat in flight can detect a thread stretched across the air, thinner than a human hair. It can differentiate between a beetle and a butterfly based on the flutter of wings, can map a landscape while soaring at full speed. Its ears are not just instruments. They are sculptors, shaping space in the mind's eye. The brain takes those echoes and builds something real, a map not of color and shadow, but of time and tone. The dolphin, too, is an artist of echoes. Though it swims in daylight waters, it often moves through murky currents where sight is dulled and distance disappears. And so it sends out clicks, focused through the melon of its forehead, a fatty structure that acts like a lens. These clicks travel through the water, strike fish or rocks or other dolphins, and bounce back. The returning echoes are received through the jaw, passed to the inner ear, and processed in the brain with stunning speed. A dolphin can tell the difference between a rock and a fish buried beneath sand. It can hear the shape of another dolphin's skeleton. It can even recognize individual heartbeats in the watery hush. What links bats and dolphins, and a handful of other beings like shrews, oilbirds, and swiftlets, is not just their ability to echolocate. It is their reliance on silence. For echolocation to work, the world must be still enough to hear the returning echoes. A storm, a crowded forest, a noisy sea, these become harder to navigate. And so echolocators live in harmony with quiet. They listen before they move. They send sound out gently with purpose and wait for the world to speak back. There is something almost meditative in this rhythm. Call, wait, listen, interpret, move. It is a kind of patience that light does not require. In brightness we see instantly. In darkness we must feel the world into being. And for those who use echolocation, that feeling becomes their clearest vision. It is not only animals that use this. Humans, too, have discovered this power. Some blind individuals have taught themselves to echolocate by clicking their tongues or tapping canes and listening to the echoes. With practice, they can sense walls, doorways, trees, even bicycles parked on the sidewalk. Their brains rewire. The visual cortex responds to sound, interpreting echoes like sight. Studies using brain imaging have shown that the same areas of the brain that light up for visual input in sighted people activate when blind echolocators hear the world. Their minds, in a quiet way, have learned to see through sound. This tells us something important, that echolocation is not a trick, not a rare magic, but a deep capacity. It lies within us, dormant perhaps, but real. It suggests that the boundary between senses is more fluid than we think, that the brain is willing to use whatever tools it can, light, sound, touch, to build a map of the world. But why did this skill evolve? What made nature whisper to certain creatures, "Do not wait for the sun, find another way"? The answer is simple and profound: night. The veil of darkness pushes evolution to invent. Where light fails, necessity grows. And in that necessity, echolocation emerged not instantly but slowly over thousands of generations. Each call slightly clearer, each echo slightly more useful, until one day a bat turned mid-flight to avoid a leaf it never saw. A dolphin slowed to avoid a coral shelf hidden in murk. The architecture was complete. It is a strange architecture built in silence. Imagine a world where walls are not seen but heard, where every space sings, where shape is determined by delay, where distance is heard, not measured. This is the world of echolocation, not a place of bright color but of shifting acoustics, a world shaped by patience, by stillness, by invisible feedback. And perhaps this is what makes it so beautiful. It reminds us that not all knowing is immediate, that sometimes we must send something out, a question, a call, and wait for it to return, that the world will answer but only if we are quiet enough to hear. Bats do not panic in darkness. They sing. Dolphins do not flail in cloudy seas. They listen. And in doing so, they reveal a truth, that the world, even in darkness, is still full of information if we learn how to ask. So let us drift gently into this invisible soundscape. Let us imagine what it would be like to move through the night guided only by echo, to hear a tree not as a word but as a delay, to feel the closeness of a wall and the bounce of your own voice. It is not just a skill, it is a philosophy, a way of moving through life with curiosity, with care, with attention paid not just to what we say but to what returns. Echolocation is the science of echoes, but it is also the poetry of patience. And in the still hush of night, when the eyes grow tired, the ears bloom open, and the world, for those willing to listen, reveals its shapes through silence. Now let us slip deeper into this sound-shaped world, where echoes are not just tools but companions. For every call that leaves a bat's mouth or a dolphin's skull is more than a pulse. It is a conversation with the invisible. It is a reaching out, a kind of acoustic touch, asking softly, "What's there?" And in the answer, the world is shaped again and again, moment by moment, in waves of return. In the dark caves of Latin America, oilbirds flap their wide wings in near blackness, sending out chirps that bounce off stone walls and fluttering wings. Their clicks are not as high-pitched as a bat, and they fall into a frequency range we can hear, a rare invitation for humans to eavesdrop on an animal's private sonar. These birds, ancient and strange, navigate through twisting tunnels with ease, avoiding jagged rock and fluttering colony mates with nothing but sound. In them, echolocation is not a backup, it is the primary path through the world. But what makes echolocation so quietly astonishing is not just the ability to locate objects, it is the detail in those perceptions. A dolphin's click bounces off a fish and tells not only distance, but shape, speed, and even the material beneath its skin. A bat knows if an insect is flying toward it or away, whether its wings are leathery or delicate. This detail is achieved through timing, the difference between a sound leaving and returning, measured in milliseconds. The bat's brain calculates these gaps with more precision than a stopwatch, more sensitivity than a scale. Echolocation has evolved many times independently. In bats, in whales, in shrews, in birds, This convergence tells us something fundamental, that sound is one of evolution's most trusted tools for navigating mystery. Light is quick, but it bends around corners, fades in fog, disappears with dusk. Sound, though slower, fills space differently. It hugs walls, curves through tunnels, slips into crevices. It is patient. It waits. And the creatures who work with it have learned not to chase what they cannot see, but to wait for what returns. And then there is the human echo, not the one we create with sonar machines or radar, but the one we craft through sheer instinct. In certain cathedrals, singers know how to find the exact spot where their voice will come back doubled, softened, made holy. Architects build opera houses where every seat receives sound as if it were the only one. In caves, even we, without instruments, learn to whisper and wait, listening for how the stone responds, for how the void gives back. Echolocation teaches this, that knowing comes from response. That meaning is formed not just in the message, but in the echo. This is why bats don't call once, they call again and again, sending out thousands of pulses in a single flight. Their world is fluid, shifting, trees sway, insects zigzag. The echo map must be constantly updated, refreshed like breath. Each chirp is a lantern, each echo a reflection of the present moment. And so movement becomes a kind of listening. Bats zig and turn not with panic but with grace, mapping the void with loops of sound. Dolphins leap through water guided by waves of echo. The path ahead is always shifting, but the method remains the same. Call, listen, respond. It is an act of faith, each pulse trusting that the world will return an answer. It is navigation by trust. This sense, though based in physics, carries something emotional, something almost spiritual. For in echolocation, we find a rhythm that mirrors so much of what it means to live. We reach out, we wait, we listen. We move toward clarity not through seeing, but through sensing. Life, too, is shaped by what bounces back. Our conversations, our memories, our dreams. They echo within us, forming contours we navigate every day. In the animal brain, the processing of these echoes is lightning fast, yet deeply complex. Regions like the inferior colliculus and auditory cortex work in harmony to turn time into space, sound into shape. These systems are layered and ancient, suggesting that the ability to build a world from echoes predates language, predates tools. It is older than we are. It is one of the first ways life learned to know itself in the dark. And the adaptations are everywhere. Some bats have evolved ear shapes that filter echoes better. Others have nose leaves that help direct their calls more precisely. Dolphins adjust the timing and pitch of their clicks depending on what they are looking for. In each species, evolution has carved out the tools of this invisible craft, shaping skulls, muscles, and neurons into instruments of perception. Even insects have begun to respond. Some moths have developed ears that hear bat echolocation and trigger evasive maneuvers. They dive, twist, or fall suddenly to the ground. In response, some bats lower the volume of their calls, using whispering sonar to sneak up on prey. It becomes an arms race in the quiet, one built not with weapons, but with silence, sensitivity, and change. We might imagine that echolocation is rare, that only a few species possess this skill. But perhaps the opposite is true. Perhaps the world is more filled with sound shapers than we know. Perhaps evolution favors those who can read the night with more than eyes. And maybe, just maybe, we too carry the echoes of this skill within us, not as sight, but as intuition, as the feeling that something is there just before we know it. Let us rest in that thought, that the world is speaking back, that even in the dark we are never alone, that with each quiet sound we send, the world listens, and when it replies, we find our path not through brightness but through trust. This is what the silent architects of echolocation know. This is what they live by. Their world is not empty, it is simply echo-shaped. Now we arrive in the softest part of this sound-shaped world, the part where motion slows, where calls quiet, and where the creatures of echo settle into their hush. For even those who navigate by sound must rest, and even echoes fade. But before the stillness returns fully, there is something more to understand, something quieter than echolocation itself, the meaning of its existence. The night is vast. It stretches beyond the limits of light, and in its depth it does not punish, it invites. In the absence of vision, evolution has whispered new languages, and among these, echolocation remains one of the most elegant, not because it replaces sight, but because it reinvents it. A bat does not envy the hawk. A dolphin does not wish for the eagle's view. They have found another way, and it works, not in spite of the dark, but because of it. Let us consider again the bat, small and fluttering, darting between branches at dusk. As others begin to sleep, it awakens. It chirps, but not for others. It chirps to know. Each call is a gentle knock against the night, a question without words. Is there space here? Is there life here? Is there danger? And when the echo returns, shaped by air and leaf and movement, it answers, yes, fly here. Yes, this is real. Yes, this is yours. And so the bat moves forward, not with certainty, but with constant adjustment. Its world is never fully drawn. It is always being sketched in waves and return. It must keep asking. And this is where echolocation becomes something more than biology. It becomes a way of being. To live by echo is to live in dialogue with the environment, to accept that every answer is temporary, every shape in motion. To echolocate is to know that the world can only be seen when you listen for it. This way of seeing is not just external. For some animals, it becomes part of their identity. Their entire experience of time and space bends around sound. Echolocation becomes the rhythm of their lives, a pulse of outgoing and incoming, of departure and return. It is breath made visible, sound made spatial, and it is always in motion, always dependent on what the world gives back. And so it teaches us a subtle lesson. That perception is not control. That vision is not a possession. That to truly understand a place or a being or a moment, one must be willing to reach gently, ask softly, and wait. The world does not always reveal itself at once. Sometimes it must be coaxed. Sometimes it must be echoed. In this sense, the architects of echolocation are not just navigators, they are listeners. And in their listening, they leave behind no footprints, no trail of light. Their passage is marked only by silence shaped into meaning. A dolphin gliding beneath the sea leaves no ripple but a click. A bat looping through the canopy disturbs not a single leaf. Their knowledge is weightless, their mastery invisible. Even when they gather, bats in a roost, dolphins in a pod, their communication weaves into the same system. Echolocation blurs into social song. Navigation becomes conversation. A chorus of clicks becomes a language of belonging. They map the world and each other at the same time, not by seeing faces but by recognizing echoes. Perhaps this is the most beautiful truth of all, that to these creatures, another's echo is as unique as a fingerprint. No two returns are the same. Each call, each bounce, carries the signature of distance, of motion, of identity. They know each other not just by scent or sight, but by the pattern of sound reflected off the curve of a skull, the slope of a wing, the shimmer of skin. They live in a symphony where each note holds meaning beyond measure. And we too live in echoes, not always the kind that travel through air, but the kind that live in memory and feeling. The words we say return to us. The choices we make ripple outward, bounce off others, come back changed. We move through spaces we cannot fully see, guided by the responses we receive. We call out, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, and wait for the world to answer. And when it does, we adjust, we navigate, we grow. This is why echolocation is not just a marvel of nature. It is a mirror of life. It reminds us that understanding is always dynamic, that presence is shaped by interaction, that nothing exists in a vacuum. We know ourselves not by what we see in the mirror, but by what echoes back from others, from the world, from time. And so the night deepens. The bats grow quiet, the dolphins dive low, the caves fall still. But the knowledge remains stored in the brain, written in the bones, passed down in the quiet thrum of DNA. Echolocation will continue. It will whisper through generations, through branches and currents, through lungs and larynxes. It will shape the way life feels its way forward, even when no light remains. Let this final thought settle with you, that the world is never silent, that even in the deepest dark there is always something returning, a sign, a shimmer, a soft reflection of something real. You do not need to see to move forward. You only need to listen. Because in the end, the map is already within you, and the echo will find its way home. In the hush of the forest, when the trees lean into the quiet and the wind forgets to move, there is a presence that watches without being seen. It perches without a sound. It flies without stirring the air. It turns its head as if time were slower for it, as if nothing could surprise it in the dark. This is the owl, a creature sculpted not only by shadow but by light's retreat. And within its eyes lies something ancient and inverted, something more than seeing, the gift of backward light. To understand how an owl sees is to enter a cathedral of stillness. Its vision begins not at the eye's surface but deep behind it, where a structure called the tapetum lucidum waits like a mirror. This mirror is not for vanity. It is for survival. When light enters the owl's wide, dark eye, it strikes the retina, and whatever is not absorbed is sent back again by this hidden mirror, giving the owl a second chance to see what others miss. It is as if the light, rather than leaving, is asked gently to return, and in this return, vision is deepened. Most mammals that see well in the dark have this reflective layer. Cats, dogs, deer. But in owls it becomes something more, part of a symphony of adaptations designed to sculpt vision out of almost nothing. Their eyes are enormous for their size, fixed in place, forward-facing like ours. But unlike human eyes, they do not roll or glance. They do not shift. Instead, the owl moves its entire head, turning it not just to look but to see completely. Nearly 270 degrees of motion, made possible by a unique bone structure and a clever rearrangement of blood vessels that ensures the brain never starves, even as the neck twists in ways that would dizzy other creatures. These wide eyes are not spheres but tubes, elongated, stretching deep into the skull like tunnels of shadow. This shape gives them exceptional focus and magnification. A mouse in tall grass, a moth flickering near bark, these are not vague blurs to the owl. They are vivid, detailed, slow. The owl's eyes gather light like wells, filling with every glimmer, every moonlit shimmer. And with the help of the tapetum, the backward mirror, even the faintest light is returned, reconsidered, re-understood. But vision alone is not enough. In the dark, motion matters more than color. Shape matters more than hue. And so the owl's retina is dense with rods, the cells that care little for color but hunger for contrast. These rods whisper the world in grayscale, mapping movement against stillness, light against less light. This is how an owl knows a field from a forest, a tree from a shadow, a vole from a leaf. Yet the owl's genius is not sight alone. Its hearing is sculpted for darkness too. Asymmetric ears, one slightly higher, the other slightly lower, allow it to map sound vertically and horizontally. A rustle beneath snow, a heartbeat in the leaves, the flutter of wings behind bark, all are triangulated with exquisite precision. The owl turns its head, not in thought but in listening. It sees with its ears as surely as with its eyes. Now imagine what the night looks like through such eyes. The world is not dark, it is textured, illuminated not by brightness but by depth, by echo, by memory. The owl knows where the mouse will move before it does, not by magic but by mastery. The backward light has shown the glint of fur. The breath of wind has carried the tremble of motion. The silence itself becomes a map. Even the feathers are part of this design. Soft-edged, serrated at the front, trailing into fringes at the back, they cut through air with barely a whisper. This silent flight allows the owl to hear its prey even as it moves, never masking sound with its own motion. It becomes the quiet itself, folded into the forest, gliding like a shadow not cast by light, but by need. The backward light is not a trick, it is not an illusion. It is evolution's answer to a question posed 1,000 times in the dark. How can we see when there is almost nothing left to see? The owl's answer is simple and elegant: reflect what little light remains. Let it pass through twice. Give the retina another chance. Let vision echo like sound. We often think of mirrors as tools for looking at ourselves, but in the owl the mirror looks outward. It is a gesture of reaching, of expanding possibility. What is missed on the first try is not lost, it is invited back. And in that second glance, the world becomes clearer. So when you look into an owl's eye, that dark, gleaming orb, you are not just seeing into an organ. You are looking into a tunnel lined with patience, a structure designed not for light but for the loss of it. The backward light is the owl's love letter to the night, a way of saying, I will find you even when you are almost gone. I will see you even when the world forgets to shine. And perhaps this is why the owl feels so mythical. It does not chase the sun. It does not demand light. It waits. It watches. It trusts that enough will return, that the glimmer will bounce, that the mirror will catch what the eye could not. In this way, it is not just a hunter. It is a keeper of secrets, a guardian of the edge between seen and unseen. To live by backward light is to believe in second chances, to turn again to what was nearly missed. And in the silence of the forest, beneath the hush of feathers and the hush of snow, the owl reminds us, even when the world grows dim, even when clarity fades, there is still a way to see. You simply have to turn toward what remains and let it shine again. Let us drift deeper now into the layered stillness that only an owl truly knows. As night thickens and the stars brighten in their distant patterns, the forest becomes a place of questions. Every rustle becomes a possibility, every pause a signal. The owl does not rush through this quiet. It listens, it watches, and it waits for the world to reveal itself one detail at a time. This waiting is not passive. It is a kind of attentiveness so finely tuned that the slightest breath of change is enough to provoke movement. The owl's power comes not from aggression, but from precision. In the low light of dusk and moon, it relies on a slow unfolding of information. Its face, round and symmetrical, serves as a satellite dish for sound. Feathers arranged in a disc help funnel tiny noises into those asymmetrical ears, turning whispers of motion into maps. This arrangement allows the owl not just to hear sound, but to localize it, to understand exactly where a twig cracked or where snow was disturbed. The air becomes legible, not in image but in texture. And this hearing, combined with its extraordinary vision, gives it an advantage few other animals possess: layered perception. It is this layering of light, of sound, of silence that makes the owl's world so rich. Most animals depend heavily on one sense, but the owl weaves multiple strands together. It does not simply see, it interprets. It does not simply hear, it locates. Each moment is cross-checked between what the eyes receive, what the ears report, and what the feathers feel, the air on its wings, the brush of leaves, the temperature shift from open meadow to forest edge. All of it becomes part of its awareness. And it uses that awareness not to dominate, but to belong. This belonging is not noisy, it is not forceful, it is quiet. The owl's silence is not the absence of sound. It is the choice to move without interruption. Its feathers are specially designed to eliminate turbulence. Microscopic structures on the surface break up the air, softening the rush of wind. Each wingbeat is muffled, each glide is smoothed, and so when it flies, the forest does not notice. The prey does not flee. The air does not resist. The owl becomes part of the medium it moves through. Even in its rest, the owl is listening. It perches high above the floor where others scramble. From its still vantage point, it surveys a world defined by gradient of shadow and sound, of warmth and wind. It does not blink without reason. It does not stir unless stirred. Its patience is its strength. In the owl, motion is always meaningful, and stillness even more so. In many cultures, the owl has been a symbol of wisdom, perhaps not because of what it knows, but because of how it knows. Slowly, silently, without needing to be seen. To live by backward light is to understand that the world is not always meant to be bright. That insight can come from the dimmest sources. That illumination is sometimes a matter of interpretation, not exposure. Owls are found in nearly every part of the world: tundra, desert, forest, grassland. And yet their shape remains consistent. Large forward-facing eyes, facial discs, broad wings, short tails. This consistency speaks of a design that works, not flashy, not loud, but enduring. The world changes, but the owl does not need to. It has already mastered the art of being present where others are absent. It does not compete with the day. It embraces the night. And what does it see there? What is revealed to a creature that sees through both light and the lack of it? The answer is not a brighter world but a clearer one. Owls do not rely on color. Their vision, like that of many night-adapted animals, is rich in contrast. They read edges, contours, shifts in brightness. A shape that moves differently, a glimmer that shouldn't be there, a shadow that changes. These are their cues. They do not need detail. They need difference. And their eyes, fixed and tubular, grant depth others cannot match. They see not just across the field, but into it. They detect the tiniest ripple of grass where a vole might be hiding, the sudden pause of a creature holding its breath. And with their mirrored tapetum lucidum, they gather and regather every glint. In essence, their sight is recursive, always reaching backward for one more photon, one more clue. There's something poetic in the way they do not waste anything. Not a sound, not a flicker, not a breath. The backward light is more than a biological feature. It is a philosophy. It teaches that what is overlooked once may still be found. That vision is not just reception but reflection. That sometimes the second look reveals more than the first. And this applies not just to their eyes but to their memory. Owls do not forget where the forest floor dips, where the stream reflects, where the trees open just wide enough for a swoop. They learn the terrain as much by what they see as by what they remember. Their paths are silent but not random. They know which perch offers the best view, which branches hold, which hollows hide prey. Every flight is a return to places known by shadow and echo and shape. When the owl finally descends, it does so without announcement. A swift, soft dive, wings tucked, eyes locked. The prey rarely hears it coming. One moment the world is still, the next it changes, a shape drops, a moment ends. But even this the owl does not do wastefully. It feeds because it must, and then it retreats back to branch, back to silence. It is a life of balance between action and rest, between observation and movement. The owl is not hurried. It does not blink its way through the dark. It opens fully. It receives. It processes. And only then does it act. This is the gift of backward light. It slows time. It doubles the moment. It allows the world to be seen again before decision must be made. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson the owl offers, that clarity is not always immediate, that sometimes we must look twice. That reflection, both literal and metaphorical, can reveal what was hidden. In the mirrored eye of the owl, we see not just the forest, but the self slowed down, seen again, understood a little better than before. Now let us walk gently into the final folds of this twilight tale, where the forest grows quieter still and the stars pulse like tiny memories in the sky. The owl is not hunting now. It is watching, resting, present without effort. Its body blends into the branches, a silhouette only if you know where to look. The night has become its language, and it speaks fluently, not in sound, but in stillness, in the subtle pause between moments. In this space, backward light continues to shine, not through brightness, but through understanding. There's a softness to how owls exist in the world. They do not demand attention, and yet they hold it. Their faces, so round and composed, seem carved from quiet. Their posture, upright yet fluid, suggests a kind of calm mastery. Even when they blink, it feels like a slow shudder passing over a deeper gaze. The owl does not need to explain itself. Its very presence explains the night. And its vision, that gift of gathering light twice, is only one of many silent tools in its care. In the animal world, survival often means speed, aggression, dominance. But the owl succeeds through elegance, through conservation of energy, through moving only when necessary. It listens more than it acts. It waits more than it chases. And in this patience it becomes something timeless. Owls do not age in the same hurried way as others. Their faces always appear wise, as if they were born already knowing how the forest breathes, how the moon travels, how prey moves when it thinks no one is watching. Backward light, too, is patient. It asks the eye to wait, to consider again, to not rush toward conclusions. It grants the world one more chance to reveal itself. And this, perhaps, is the deeper meaning behind the mirror in the eye, not just to see more, but to believe that seeing is never finished. That perception is a process, not a flash. That truth often comes after the first look. And so the owl becomes a guide not only to how we might survive the dark, but how we might move through it gently, not with fear, but with attentiveness, not with urgency, but with grace. It shows us that darkness is not emptiness, it is complexity, that the absence of light is not the absence of information. There is texture here, there is story, there is a rhythm to how things move when they are not seen. Even in the way they raise their young, owls reflect this rhythm. Nestled in hollows or quiet crags, their chicks grow slowly, fed at night, hidden by day. They are born into the shadow, cradled by silence, and the parent does not hover noisily. It glides in, delivers what is needed, and departs again. The forest remains undisturbed. The nest remains unseen. It is care without spectacle. And as the owlets open their eyes, they inherit the gift, the mirrored eye, the deep rods, the fixed stare that will one day chart their own path through the branches. They will learn to wait, to listen, to trust the glint. The world they enter is not fully lit, but it does not need to be. The backward light will be enough. For us living in a world of artificial brightness, the owl offers contrast. We flood our homes and streets with electric suns, banishing the shadows, racing against night. But in doing so, we forget what slow light can teach us. We forget that vision can be sharpened by darkness. That reflection is more than an idea, it is a function, a capacity to deepen awareness. The owl in its silence invites us to return to this wisdom, to step outside, to let the eyes adjust, to wait until the stars become visible, until the shapes return, until the quiet becomes comforting. There is something sacred in the owl's gaze, not mystical but measured, not magical but exact. Its vision is not clouded by hope or fear, it is simply present, and in that presence there is space for revelation. To be seen by an owl is to be known without judgment, not as a friend, not as a threat, but as a movement, a form, a warmth in the field. It sees you because you are there, because you matter in the geometry of its night. In mythology, owls have stood at the edges of worlds, messengers between life and death, between conscious and unconscious, between seen and unseen. But in truth, they are not guardians of transition. They are dwellers in continuity. The night does not separate, it connects. The owl does not fear the dark, it belongs to it. And perhaps that is what we're being reminded of, that there is wisdom in not needing everything illuminated, that some truths are better understood in half-light, that clarity comes not from exposing every corner, but from letting some things return to us slowly, in echo, in glimmer, in the soft doubling of backward light. So tonight, as the world turns away from the sun, let your eyes rest. Let them widen. Let them remember the kind of seeing that waits. Think of the owl, high in the trees, unmoving but never unaware. Think of its eyes, dark and deep and full of patient mirrors. Think of the light that comes back, not because it must, but because the eye knows how to ask for it. You do not need to force understanding. You only need to notice what returns. And in that return, something quiet and true will be revealed. This is what the owl knows. This is what the backward light remembers. At first glance, night seems to erase color. The blues fade, the greens dull, and the reds disappear into shadow. We tell ourselves that the world turns grayscale after the sun sinks, that the palette of evening is made only of silvers and shadows. But this is not entirely true. The night does not strip color away, it alters it. It softens the edges, stretches the wavelengths, and reveals hues we are not always able to name. There are colors in the night, waiting in quiet places, seen by other eyes and other minds, and they whisper stories of evolution, light, and mystery. Our eyes are built for the day. 3 types of cones help us decode the spectrum: short, medium, and long wavelengths, giving us the familiar rainbow from violet to red. In bright light, these cones bloom with activity, but in darkness they quiet, and another set of cells, the rods, take over. Rods are marvels of sensitivity. A single photon, the smallest possible unit of light, can trigger them, but they are colorblind. They trade richness for resolution, hue for motion. That is why, when darkness falls, the world feels muted, even though the light continues to move. But not all eyes are like ours. Some creatures, shaped by different needs, have found ways to see color where we see none. In the ocean's twilight zones, deep-sea fish have evolved pigments that absorb faint blues and greens long after the sun is gone. Certain shrimp species, like the mantis shrimp, boast a kaleidoscope of photoreceptors, up to 16 types, allowing them to sense ultraviolet, polarized light, and subtle shifts we cannot even imagine. And among the mammals, some nocturnal primates retain enough cone activity to see colors in the dusk, adapting to a spectrum that hovers between light and loss. Even among humans, not all vision is the same. Some individuals possess a fourth type of cone, tetrachromats, allowing them to perceive an expanded range of hues, particularly in the yellow-green spectrum. This gift is rare and often goes unnoticed, since our world is built for those with ordinary vision. But it reminds us that color is not a fixed thing. It is a relationship between light, the eye, and the brain. It is a perception shaped by evolution and need. And in the dark, that relationship bends. There are places where the night carries colors we do not have names for. Bioluminescent bays, for example, where microorganisms shimmer electric blue when disturbed, paint the water with an eerie glow. In these moments, light is not reflected, it is born. Created by life, by chemistry, by the quiet fire of existence. No lens is needed. No sun is required. Only movement, only life. And then there is moonlight, not colorless but subtly cool, tinged with a bluish cast that shifts depending on atmosphere, phase, and reflection. The moon does not create its own light, but in bouncing sunlight back to Earth, it filters it through dust, water vapor, and distance. The result is a kind of ghost light, not quite blue, not quite silver, that softens everything it touches. This light does not wash the world in absence, but in transformation. The grass still holds its green, the flowers their blush, but now these colors exist in suggestion, not certainty. They become feelings more than facts. To creatures adapted for dusk and dark, these colors are not metaphors. They are navigational tools, signs of food, mates, danger, or shelter. The crepuscular deer sees the world not in our bold reds and deep purples, but in subtle shifts of contrast and brightness. Their eyes are tuned to low-light conditions, allowing them to move through forests without stumbling, to find the path even when the colors collapse into fog. And in the world of birds, vision transforms again. Many species, even those active during the day, can see into the ultraviolet. Their feathers reflect these hidden colors, forming patterns invisible to us. A mate's attraction, a rival's warning, a fledgling's signal, all encoded in flashes of light we cannot detect. In the night, this ability changes how they see the moonlight, how they read the stars, how they move through a sky we assume to be black. Even plants, in their stillness, respond to night colors. Some open only in the dark, releasing scents that call to moths or bats. Their petals reflect ultraviolet light, invisible to humans but glowing like lanterns to their pollinators. These flowers are not silent in the dark. They are vivid in a language we have forgotten how to read. Color, then, is not lost at night. It simply shifts beyond our grasp. It becomes something softer, subtler, stranger. It slips between categories, blending in ways we can no longer describe. And in doing so, it reminds us that vision is never absolute, that what we call black might be blue, that what we dismiss as gray might be a whole world waiting and waiting. Somewhere in the forest, a moth flutters toward a pale bloom, guided by contrast we cannot see. Somewhere near the sea, plankton glow with an inner fire, undisturbed by the absence of sun. And high above, a bird flies by starlight, its feathers gleaming with signals that belong to a different kind of sight. The night is not empty of color. It is filled with colors that belong to other eyes, other species, other rhythms of life. And when we walk through darkness, we walk through a painting in another language, one written in long wavelengths, in afterglow, in echo. And perhaps in dreams, when our own minds turn down the noise of day, we glimpse those unnameable shades, the ones that do not exist on any visible spectrum but live instead in emotion, in memory, in metaphor. The deep indigo of longing, the violet of silence, the green-gray of waiting. Color does not end when light does. It continues in different forms in different bodies. The night, quiet as it may seem, is alive with it. Now let us wander deeper into this shadowed canvas, into the world of color that breathes softly beneath the moon and stars. For even when our eyes surrender their daytime palette, the earth does not stop glowing. It hums in longer wavelengths, in subtler frequencies, in hues that are not bound to language. And though we do not often see them, they are there, waiting in the folds of dusk, in the shimmer of dew under starlight, in the breath between one heartbeat and the next. These are the colors that belong to the dark, not because they were banished by day, but because they are born of stillness. In the animal kingdom, these colors are not a mystery but a necessity. Many nocturnal creatures do not see color the way we do, but what they see instead is equally rich. Their vision often relies on contrast rather than saturation, on the delicate boundary between one shade and the next. But some have evolved special adaptations that stretch the spectrum further. Certain frogs and salamanders can detect near-infrared light, extending their range of perception past the limits of ordinary sight. Some insects can see ultraviolet even in low light, using it to trace flowers in the dark, petals aglow like silent flames. What we consider invisible becomes, to them, a guide. There is a quiet joy in knowing that the world continues without our permission, that light continues to bounce, bend, and bloom even when we cannot trace its path, that every rock, every leaf, every wingbeat still reflects a color we cannot name. And perhaps this is the most honest way to see the night, not as an absence, but as an invitation. A place where certainty loosens and we are reminded that we do not know everything, that there are still sights to be imagined. Colors that live just outside the edge of recognition. When we try to describe these hidden hues, we often borrow words from emotion. We speak of a cold blue that chills the bones, of a warm red that pulses like a memory. We say a night is violet with silence, or ash-colored with waiting. These aren't colors in the strict sense, they are bridges. Our minds, unable to name what is truly there, reach instead for feeling. In doing so, we admit that some parts of the world can only be felt, not cataloged. And there is truth in that. Light is not a fixed thing. It bends and scatters, stretches across miles, filters through clouds, refracts through droplets. A color seen at noon is not the same as that same color seen at dusk. Even within daylight, the sky shifts from golden to pale blue to lavender, depending on the angle of the sun. And at twilight, these shifts become poetry. The line between color and light blurs until the entire horizon feels like a breath, wide, warm, and unspoken. Some artists and physicists have tried to chart the full spectrum, to account for every possible wavelength, every possible hue. But the human eye, for all its wonder, is limited. We see only a narrow band from about 400 to 700 nanometers, a small slice of a vast rainbow. Infrared lies just beyond red, ultraviolet just beyond violet. And beyond those, more mysteries. X-rays, gamma rays, radio waves, each a form of light, each carrying information, each ignored by the cones and rods inside our eyes. Yet they're here all around us all the time. Birds, bees, and butterflies see ultraviolet reflections on flowers that we cannot detect. What looks like a plain petal to us is a map to them, streaked with glowing veins and radiant centers. Reindeer who live in the snowy Arctic can perceive ultraviolet light, which helps them spot lichen against the snow or the urine trails of predators. Their world is white to us but glowing with contrasts to them. Color, it turns out, depends on context, on the viewer, on the need. In the deep sea, color transforms again. Sunlight can only reach so far below the surface. Reds vanish first, swallowed by water, oranges next. Only blue and green survive the descent. And so many deep-sea creatures have adapted to be red, invisible in the depth, hidden by the water's filter. Others have developed bioluminescence, casting pale green or blue light in the darkness, not to see but to signal, to hunt, to find mates. The darkness becomes not a void but a stage. The idea that the night has no color is a misunderstanding born of human limitation. We think the world sleeps because our vision dims. But the world never stops. The chlorophyll in leaves still glows faintly in infrared. The dust in the air still scatters moonlight. The minerals in stone still reflect subtle hues that no name can catch. Some scientists believe that with the right sensors, the Earth itself glows not with heat, but with an ambient shimmer. Not bright enough to read by, but enough to know the world is alive. And even within us, the night brings color. Our dreams are painted not in true light, but in internal memory. We dream of skies that shift from violet to ochre, of oceans dyed in indigo and copper. These colors may not exist in the world we wake into, but they are real to the dreaming mind. Perhaps because we once knew them, or perhaps because color, in the end, is not about accuracy but about presence, about how something makes us feel. There is comfort in the idea that the universe holds more than we can see, that long after we close our eyes, the world continues its quiet blooming. The forest does not go gray. The ocean does not turn to black. They shimmer with the touch of unseen rays, with colors that slide between categories. We live in a spectrum far wider than we can understand. So the next time you step outside under a sky draped in darkness, remember, you are not alone in the night. Around you are colors you cannot name, wavelengths that touch your skin without entering your eyes. Somewhere nearby, a flower glows for a passing moth. Somewhere high above, a star flickers with a blue too deep for your vision. Somewhere in the grass, a beetle reads the landscape through ultraviolet eyes. The night is not colorless, it is just color turned inward. And in that turning, it becomes something even more beautiful. Now let us linger in this quiet final chapter, where the night no longer feels empty, but textured, a soft layering of tones too gentle for daylight to carry. The day may belong to the vivid, the saturated, the sharp and certain. But the night is reserved for mystery, for the half-seen, for the shimmer that slips between categories. It is here that color becomes something else, not a name, but a presence. Not a category, but a conversation between light, biology, and longing. Even without the sun, color does not vanish. It folds itself gently into memory, into instinct, into biology's long patience. The rods in our eyes continue gathering photons, tracing the softest shapes. Our brains continue weaving scenes in grayscale, deepening shadows, layering depth. We may not know what color the trees wear at midnight, but we know the way they sway. And sometimes, movement is a kind of hue. Sometimes, stillness is a kind of light. In this low-light world, we discover that color is never a fixed thing. It is always in transition, bending with the angle of light, stretching through the lens of atmosphere, reshaping itself in water, in fog, in shadow. A red flower at noon is a different red at dusk. The sky at sunset is never just orange. It is peach, coral, gold, mauve, and a dozen unnamed shades between. At night, these subtleties do not disappear. They soften. They become ideas instead of facts. They invite wonder instead of certainty. To live by night is to accept that perception has limits, but in that acceptance there is freedom. We do not need to label every hue. We do not need to know the exact temperature of every wavelength. Sometimes it is enough to feel that a space glows, that something is there, not visible but real. And in this way, color becomes emotion. The indigo of solitude, the silver of stillness, the charcoal blue of memory. This is not to say color becomes imaginary, only that it becomes interpretive. It becomes a language we feel before we understand. Many artists have known this. Painters who layer shadows upon shadows to reveal warmth. Photographers who shoot at twilight to catch the subtle transition between the visible and the suggested. Poets who use color as feeling, not description. All are trying to speak a language the night already knows. And still, science continues to reveal more. With instruments that see beyond us, we find new colors constantly. Infrared views of the Earth show heat patterns, plant activity, moisture levels. Ultraviolet filters reveal the sun's complex storms, the fluorescence in minerals, the secret markings on petals. The world is radiant in wavelengths we cannot see and always has been. We are just now catching up. There are even colors that exist only in the brain, called impossible colors. They occur when the eye receives conflicting signals like red and green or blue and yellow at the same time. The brain, struggling to reconcile, creates a third perception, one that doesn't exist in nature but feels real. These colors defy the boundaries of the visible spectrum. They live in liminal space, not quite here, not quite there. And yet they move us. They remind us that color, like thought, is not confined to the physical. At night, this fluidity becomes clearer. In dreams, our minds invent colors that don't follow the rules of reflection. We remember them not precisely but viscerally. A field of impossible violet, a sky lit with golden gray. The colors in dreams are often forgotten upon waking, not because they were false, but because they were untranslatable. They belong to a moment where emotion painted the scene, and the night is full of these moments. So when we speak of the colors we cannot name, we are not referring only to biological limits. We are referring to the emotional terrain of color, to the way certain moments are colored by memory, by longing, by atmosphere. A walk at dusk is not just darker, it is blue in a way no photograph can capture. A candle in a quiet room is not just orange, it is warm in a way that speaks of presence. A night sky before a storm holds a green-gray that feels like expectation. These colors don't appear in textbooks, but they are real. Real in the way a whisper is real. Real in the way a glance can carry more than a sentence. Real in the way the forest feels different when the moon is behind a cloud. And perhaps the night teaches us gently that not all things are meant to be defined. Some are meant to be felt, shared, remembered, but never fully pinned down. Just as darkness is not the absence of light, but the presence of something softer, color too becomes less about the eye and more about the spirit. We are surrounded always by wavelengths that never enter our vision, yet they shape our world, they warm our skin, they guide birds across oceans, they bloom flowers unseen by our gaze, they dance on the surface of stones, waiting for someone else to notice. We are just one way of seeing. The world does not rely on us to be vivid. So let the night come. Let the sky dim and the edges blur. Let the colors fade from name into experience. There are shades here that belong to moths, to frogs, to flowers, to time itself. You do not need to see them to believe in them. You only need to remember that even in the dark, the world continues to shine. And in that unseen shine, there is still color. Color you cannot name, but color that knows you're there. Long before the stars had names, long before forests reached toward sky or wings split wind, there was a glow beneath the sea, soft, patient, without sound. A light that pulsed in rhythm with the tides, flickered in the hush of the ocean's breath, and shimmered in creatures too delicate to anchor on land. This light did not come from fire, nor from sun, nor from anything burning. It came from within. It came from life. And in that underwater twilight, drifting like petals through salt and silence, the first jellyfish began to glow. They were not trying to be seen. There were no eyes then to see them. They were not trying to impress or alarm. Their glow was quiet like breath. It emerged not from ego but from chemistry, a soft language written in photons, released gently into the dark. And as they floated, bell-shaped and translucent, their light was the sea's first whisper of beauty. Not survival, not power, just presence. Bioluminescence, the ability of an organism to produce light through internal reactions, is among the oldest biological traits. It predates bones. It predates the heartbeat. In jellyfish, this light is often bluish-green, the color that travels farthest through water. It emerges from the dance between luciferin, a light-emitting molecule, and luciferase, the enzyme that triggers its glow. Together, they create a flicker, a moment where chemistry becomes illumination. Some jellyfish glow when touched. Others glow in pulses, or with each contraction of their soft bells. And some, like the crystal jelly, have become symbols of scientific wonder, offering their luminous proteins, like green fluorescent protein, or GFP, to help researchers study cells, diseases, even thoughts. From this creature that barely has a brain came a tool that allowed us to watch the inner lives of neurons. From something so soft and silent came insight into the deepest chambers of ourselves. But the glow of the jellyfish is not only scientific, it is poetic. It is the ocean's way of remembering the stars it cannot see. Down in the midnight zone where no sunlight penetrates, bioluminescent creatures flicker in blues and violets, sending signals no mammal can read, composing symphonies in color that echo through pressure and time. In this place, light is not a background, it is a decision, a message, a mood. Why do they glow? The reasons are as diverse as the species themselves. Some use it to lure prey, mimicking the glint of a smaller creature to draw in the curious. Others use it as a decoy, flashing bright before disappearing, leaving a trail of fading light for a predator to follow while the jellyfish drifts away unnoticed. Some use it to communicate, sending pulses of light across the dark water like whispers passed between drifters. And some, perhaps, glow simply because they can. Because evolution once offered them a sparkle, and they held onto it like a secret. Unlike us, jellyfish have no centralized brain, no heart, no bones. They are composed mostly of water and collagen, their nerve nets scattered like constellations under transparent skin. And yet they move with purpose, rhythmically pulsing through currents, responding to touch, temperature, gravity. They are as much part of the sea as the tide itself. And when they glow, it is not a performance. It is a continuation of being. To imagine the first glow is to imagine a world without reflection. A world where no creature could admire itself in the mirror, where light did not bounce off surfaces but emerged from within. In this world, the jellyfish's glow was not ornament. It was an extension of existence, a way to make presence known in the vast, quiet dark. And this changes something, doesn't it? To know that the first lights in the living world did not blaze or blind, but shimmered gently in drifting softness. That before fire, before electricity, before the spark that we call thought, there was already light. And it was biological. It was born not of need, but of possibility. Today, the oceans still carry these silent lanterns. Jellyfish continue to glow in coastal shallows and in abyssal plains. Some blink like heartbeat rhythms. Others remain steadily lit, as if holding up a torch in a place where torches have no meaning. And surrounding them are others who glow too: plankton, squid, comb jellies, deep-sea fish. The sea has never been dark. We simply didn't know how to look. The jellyfish's glow reminds us that life does not always speak loudly. Sometimes it pulses gently. Sometimes it is barely there, a glow beneath a wave, a flash too quick to capture. But it is there, moving, continuing, announcing softly, "I am." And though the jellyfish cannot see its own light, cannot admire its reflection or marvel at its luminescence, it sends it anyway, into the vastness, into the water that holds more pressure than sky, more memory than land. It glows because that is what it has always done. It glows because that is what the sea gave it. And perhaps that is what makes the jellyfish's glow so special, not that it exists, but that it endures. Through mass extinctions, through shifting oceans, through rising temperatures and falling reefs, it persists, a pale, pulsing light in the dark, a signature older than language, a beauty that belongs to no one and to everything. To float alongside such a creature is to be reminded that wonder does not need to roar, that mystery can drift, that some lights are born not to lead but to linger. And in the presence of that glow, you do not need to understand. You only need to be still, to watch, to let the silence wrap around you and the light enter gently. Because before we had fire, we had this. Before we had stories, we had the glow. And the ocean still remembers. Let us now drift deeper into the meaning of that glow, not just as a spectacle, but as a legacy. For the jellyfish, with its ancient pulse and translucent frame, does not exist to impress us. Its luminescence is not a performance, but a quiet inheritance from a time when light itself was a new idea in the world. When darkness ruled the oceans, and the earliest forms of life learned not to fear it, but to illuminate it from within. These soft-bodied creatures carried a torch made not of flame, but of biochemistry, a shimmering invitation into the unknown. Glowing in the dark is not just rare, it's efficient. Bioluminescence requires no heat, no wasteful fire. It is a cold light, one that flows gently from one molecule to the next, releasing just enough to be seen, to be felt, to make a difference. It is not aggressive, it is not greedy, it is simply present, and in the jellyfish it manifests as rings, flashes, flickers, each one a small announcement to the sea. Something is here, something is alive. This glow has inspired generations of discovery. In the 1960s, scientists began to isolate the proteins responsible for this light, first equorin, and then green fluorescent protein GFP, both drawn from the Pacific jellyfish Equoria victoria. What started as curiosity became transformation. GFP was soon used to tag cells, lighting up genes, neurons, cancer pathways, even memories. Under the microscope, human biology began to glow in green. The glow that once guided jellyfish through dark water now helped us understand the brain's deepest channels, the heart's most delicate rhythms. From the sea's gentle light came clarity. And yet, even with this application, the jellyfish remains a mystery. It is both primitive and futuristic, a creature without a brain that contributed to the mapping of consciousness. It lacks a heart, yet its glow reveals the heartbeat of molecular life. It has no bones, but its proteins hold structure in our hands. It does not seek out complexity, yet it embodies it. This paradox is not a flaw, it is a feature. The jellyfish teaches us that intelligence is not always about thinking, that meaning does not always require language, and that beauty can come from the simplest shapes. In the deep ocean, where light does not penetrate, the jellyfish's glow becomes even more astonishing. Down there, pressure mounts, temperature drops, and the silence becomes a weight. Yet life persists, and not just any life, but luminous life. Comb jellies ripple with rainbow-colored waves, each beat of their cilia sending cascades of light across their gelatinous forms. Other species, like Atala jellyfish, emit bright flashes when threatened not to fight, but to summon larger predators, distracting the hunter that approached. Even here, light is used not just to see, but to communicate, to send a message that cannot be ignored. And perhaps this is what bioluminescence truly is, a language, one that predates speech, predates sound. It speaks through flashes and delays, through colors and pulses, through presence. Jellyfish use this language not with intention, but with being. They do not plan their glow. They are their glow, and that is a concept we are only just beginning to understand. To us, light has often meant domination, torches to conquer the dark, lamps to extend our working hours, lasers to cut, to aim, to mark. But the jellyfish reminds us that light can also be soft, that it can live without heat, without war, without demand. Its luminescence does not control, it reveals. It does not burn, it beckons. And in the quiet movement of its drifting bell, the jellyfish invites us to consider another way of being visible. There's something comforting in knowing that this light exists without audience, that deep in the ocean, a jellyfish may glow for no one, drift past rocks unseen, flash its rhythm only to passing currents. It does not require applause. Its glow is not a performance, it is an essence. This is a reminder to us, perhaps, that not everything beautiful needs to be seen, that not every act of radiance needs a witness. Sometimes, simply existing softly, steadily, is enough. And the jellyfish, in all its ancient simplicity, has existed for over 500 million years. It survived when continents shifted, when oceans boiled and froze, when life blinked out and returned again. Through all this, it kept glowing, not because it was the strongest, not because it was the fastest, but because it adapted, because it yielded, because it knew how to float. Its body gives way to pressure. Its form changes with current. Its light bends with the needs of the water. There is a wisdom in that, not to resist, but to respond. We often overlook creatures like jellyfish. They are too slow, too soft, too strange. But what if softness is strength? What if slowness is survival? The jellyfish glows not in competition, but in continuity. It doesn't fight the ocean. It becomes part of it. Its light is not an act of defiance. It is a song of belonging. Imagine for a moment floating beside it, the sea around you black and still, and then a shimmer, a pale pulse. No sound, no warning, just light born from the body of something ancient. You drift closer, the jellyfish contracts, expands, the light repeats. It does not rush, it does not flee, It continues. In that moment you feel it not as a flash but as a breath, not as spectacle but as presence. And you realize this is the glow that came before fire, before stars were charted, before memory was written down. This is the first form of visibility, the first offering of awareness in the dark, and it still lives, pulsing gently beneath the waves. The jellyfish never had to glow, but it did. And it still does. And from it we learn to see ourselves. Let us now float quietly through the final passage of this glowing tale, where the jellyfish's light no longer feels like a curiosity but a companion soft, ancestral, and unending. For in a world that so often seeks the loudest brilliance, the jellyfish glows with humility. It does not radiate to dazzle or to blind. It glows because the ocean allows it, because evolution chose softness, because the dark, instead of being a void, became an invitation. The jellyfish never claimed the surface. It did not build or conquer. It did not walk or roar. It was content to drift. And yet in drifting, it left behind something extraordinary, a thread of light that would someday change the way humans understand life itself. Not just in the lab, where its proteins now illuminate cells and synapses, but in the quiet metaphor it offers, that even the gentlest presence can cast a glow that endures. Deep in the ocean, far from human eyes, jellyfish continue their silent drift. They pulse not to a clock but to a rhythm older than time. They rise with the moon and fall with the dawn, following invisible trails of tide and gravity. Their glow appears not as command but as response to touch, to pressure, to movement. And in this responsiveness lies their truth. They do not resist the world, they reflect it. They do not chase the light, they become it. Even now, scientists do not fully understand all the reasons jellyfish glow. Some speculate it's for defense, others for attraction, still others for no reason at all. But perhaps the why is less important than the fact that they do and have for millions of years. That in a realm where darkness reigns, they chose to shine, quietly, without need, without apology. This glow, once confined to jellyfish bells and translucent tentacles, now flickers in medical imaging, in microscopic studies, in petri dishes under fluorescent microscopes. From the ocean's floor to the peaks of neuroscience, that ancient shimmer has traveled far. It has left the sea, entered our hands, and lit up the maps of our inner worlds. A protein, once made to confuse predators or lure prey, now helps us see what a human cell does when it heals, when it breaks, when it remembers. And isn't that remarkable? That something so soft, so silent, so utterly unstructured could lead us to understanding the brain's secrets. That from the bell of a drifting creature without thought came tools that allowed us to study thought itself. It feels, somehow, like the universe laughing kindly, as if to say, complexity is not always the key. Sometimes it is the glow that survives. The jellyfish does not envy the sun. It does not wish for warmth or gravity or land. It simply accepts the medium it lives in. Salt and pressure, drift and pull. Its beauty lies in this surrender, in the way it allows the world to pass through it, in the way it bends without breaking, in the way it carries its light without needing to aim it. As we move through our own nights, our own periods of uncertainty or quiet or unknowing, the jellyfish offers a kind of lesson that we do not need to shine constantly, that pulsing is enough, that there are times for stillness, for drift, for letting the currents carry us, and that within us, too, there is light waiting to be released, not as flame but as presence, as awareness, as the willingness to be seen gently. In ancient oceans, the jellyfish's glow may have been the first light that life produced, not as a reflection of the sun, but as its own spark. And now that same spark lives on. In labs, yes, but also in metaphor, in memory, in every time we marvel at something soft and quiet and wonder how it could hold so much power. The jellyfish has no voice, but its glow speaks. It says, I am here, I am part of this. I move with the world, not against it, and in doing so I continue. Even in death some jellyfish glow. Their last contraction, their final float, marked by a soft burst of light, as if to say goodbye to the sea and to the story that held them. A story that began not with conquest but with chemistry, not with shape but with light. And maybe that's the heart of it, that this glow born in silence, carried through pressure and time, is a reminder that not all legacies need to stand tall. Some drift, some shimmer briefly and leave no mark but the memory of their light. So when you stand near the ocean at night and the waves seem darker than usual, remember what moves below. Remember that even there in the depths where no sunlight reaches, something glows. Not for you, not for spectacle, but because it always has. The jellyfish that glowed first is still glowing. And in that glow lives everything gentle the night has ever known. There was a time when the earth had no eyes. No gaze swept across the plains, no pupils drank the sky, no minds turned outward in wonder. Life was simple, soft, and blind. But the darkness was there before light, before thought, before any sense of self. It wrapped the early oceans in quiet, settled between tectonic breaths, filled every cave and crevice with the hush of what could be. And in that darkness, something extraordinary began. Not a shape, not a limb, but a shift, slow, subtle, ancient, that would someday lead to the brain. Before the sun's rhythms came to mean morning and night, life responded not to brightness but to pressure, to chemical gradients, to warmth. In those earliest forms, scattered in tide pools or drifting through prehistoric seas, there was no need for light. But the darkness, the absence, was not empty. It asked questions in the way pressure asks the shell to form. In the way depth sculpts movement, it asked quietly, where is safety? What moves in the unseen? What changes in silence? And so began the first nerves, not to see but to feel, to detect the flow of water, the shift of chemical salt, the nearness of another. These nerves clustered, forming small nets of information, the ancestors of neurons, not yet processing, not yet remembering, but beginning. And in those first whispering networks, the roots of thought were planted in the dark. The earliest brains did not arrive fully formed. They emerged as clusters, then chords, then centers, slow blooms of sensory integration. In the worm we see it still, a small line of nervous tissue enough to coordinate movement, to navigate its way through soil and water. But even here we find evidence that darkness was teacher. The worms burrow not toward light but away from it. They seek consistency, dampness, shadow. Their neurons do not chase the sun. They retreat, they adjust. Darkness is not feared, it is home. In many species, the first sense was not sight but touch, pressure, then smell, then sound. Sight came later, once life reached upward toward shallows and surfaces, but the foundational architecture of the brain was built before that, built to hold space for what was not seen, built to guess, to anticipate, to respond to absence. The brain, in its earliest forms, was a tool for navigating the unknown. And that unknown was darkness. Even in more complex animals, we find traces of this shaping. The pineal gland, nestled deep in our own brains, is a remnant of a time when light sensitivity lived closer to the core. In amphibians, it still acts like a third eye, detecting the difference between day and night. In us, it governs rhythms, the sleep-wake cycle, the release of melatonin, the body's quiet dance with dusk. This inner eye remembers a world where darkness was not interruption, but instruction. Our brains are not just processors of light, they are sculptors of the unseen. We imagine, we dream, we anticipate. These are not functions of daylight. They are born in the dark, in sleep, in stillness, in blindness. Even our capacity for memory, for storytelling, for imagination, emerges most vividly when light fades. The theater of the mind lights up when the world grows dim. Consider dreams, a nightly immersion into an interior world where no light enters, and yet we see, we move, we remember. The brain, untethered from external stimulus, begins to build its own visions. It creates color, shape, emotion, all without light. This is not a fallback. This is a feature. The brain was made to work in darkness just as it was made to react to it. Darkness is not the brain's enemy. It is its oldest canvas. Even in waking life, the brain fills in what the eyes miss. Our vision has blind spots, literal spaces where the optic nerve interrupts the image. And yet we see no gaps. The brain invents, it smooths, it guesses. In the shadows of trees, in the dimness of rooms, it enhances what is barely there. It makes stories out of fragments. Light gives us information, but darkness gives us creativity. In the animal world, many species have evolved to rely more on non-visual senses, and their brains reflect this. Moles, living entirely underground, have underdeveloped eyes but enlarged somatosensory regions in their brains. Bats, as we've seen, map the world through sound. Electric fish navigate by sensing disturbances in electric fields. In each case, the brain expands to match the medium. And darkness, again, is the sculptor carving new paths through necessity. Our own ancestors were shaped by dark cycles. The cave, the night, the unknown beyond the firelight, these were not just environments. They were stimuli. They influenced how early humans thought, remembered, feared, and dreamed. The need to store information in the mind when it could not be seen gave rise to memory. The need to imagine threats gave rise to imagination. The need to communicate unseen danger gave rise to language. And all of it first in darkness. So much of what we associate with higher thinking began not with light but with absence, problem solving, prediction, empathy. These do not require brightness. They require context. They require silence. They require a mind willing to wander in the dark and find its way without a map. And the brain has always been that mind. Even now, when our world is lit by 1,000 screens, we still return to darkness. We sleep to restore memory. We close our eyes to pray, to kiss, to think. We dim the lights to watch a film, to listen to music, to reflect. Darkness is the setting in which the brain feels most itself, not overwhelmed by input, but centered in its own signal. In that quiet, it listens again, not with ears, but with everything. To say that darkness shaped the brain is not to be poetic. It is to be precise. The architecture of neurons, the fluidity of thought, the patterns of dreaming, the pulse of internal rhythm, all of it bears the fingerprint of shadow. The dark taught the brain how to wait, how to listen, how to imagine. And so when you close your eyes tonight, and the world recedes into silence and blur, know that you are not entering nothing. You are entering origin. You are returning to the medium that first called thought into being. You are drifting through the same dark that carved intelligence out of cells and sparked fire in the space between neurons. You are going home. Now let's move deeper into this ancestral quiet, where the folds of the brain begin to echo the folds of the night. For while light has painted the outer world in shapes and contrasts, it is darkness that has shaped our inner world, our ability to reflect, to imagine, to remember without needing to see. The brain is not only a mirror for what is visible, it is a lantern for what is not. And this lantern, flickering deep in its chambers, was kindled by shadow long before it ever flickered in firelight. In the womb, the human brain begins in darkness. Protected from the outside world, it forms in the soft aquatic hush of the body, its neurons reaching, forming synapses without the guidance of sight. Touch, sound, pressure, these are its first teachers. And when light finally arrives, it does not replace darkness. It only joins it. The brain continues to rely on what was learned in the absence. Our inner maps, our first impressions of space and rhythm and time, are shaped before we ever open our eyes. And yet, once born, the brain must constantly balance two worlds, one governed by light, the other by dark. Our circadian rhythms, the ancient biological clock embedded in nearly every cell, still bow to the cycle of shadow and shine. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, a tiny structure in the brain's hypothalamus, regulates this rhythm using signals from the eyes. But what it governs is not merely sleep. It orchestrates hormone levels, metabolism, attention, body temperature, all tuned to a cycle older than civilization. Darkness tells the brain, now is the time to heal, to store, to wander inward, and the brain listens. As light fades, melatonin is released, easing the body into rest. Brainwaves slow, drifting from wakefulness into the slower pulses of sleep. And in that descent, the night begins its work. Toxins are flushed, memories are filed, emotions are softened. Dreams rise, uninvited but welcome, carrying the colors of thought through the dim corridors of self. We often overlook how busy the brain becomes when the world quiets down. In deep sleep, patterns replay the day's sights, feelings, puzzles. The hippocampus, center of memory, converses with the cortex, encoding the important, releasing the trivial. And in REM sleep, the brain becomes both stage and actor, constructing stories from fragments, mixing time and logic, inventing futures. This nocturnal theater is not a defect. It is design. It is the brain's most ancient rehearsal space, one where new connections are forged not by stimulus, but by the fertile looseness that only darkness provides. Even consciousness itself, that elusive flame we call I, is shaped by periods of unknowing. When we fall asleep, the sense of self fades, but when we wake, it returns, often refreshed, sometimes redefined. The darkness does not erase identity, it resets it. In silence, in absence, the brain gathers its scattered threads and weaves meaning again. And yet, even when we are awake, darkness does not release its grip. It remains, hovering at the edges of perception, reminding us that vision is only part of reality. Studies show that in low-light environments, people tend to think more abstractly. Deprived of visual certainty, the brain begins to search inward, making broader connections, imagining possibilities. The shadows around us invite stories. The blur of twilight urges reflection. The fog of an unlit room stirs invention. In this way, darkness is not a limit but a lens, one that helps us see what is not yet real. This is perhaps why so many rituals, both ancient and modern, are held in dimness. Meditation, prayer, storytelling, even scientific thought all often happen under the comfort of shadow. We close our eyes to go inward. We light candles not to brighten everything but to highlight only what matters. Darkness reduces noise. It allows the brain to tune its signal, to listen. Throughout history, humans have used the dark not only to sleep, but to connect with each other, with spirit, with mystery. Around the fire in the mouth of the cave, stories were born, and those stories weren't just entertainment. They were memory devices, empathy builders, tools for survival. The brain evolved to receive these narratives, to hold them, to pass them on. And it did so first in darkness. Even now, storytelling remains a ritual of dusk. Bedtime tales, campfire legends, late-night confessions. The light dims and the mind leans forward. Our brains have been trained for this, not to see, but to imagine. And imagination, too, is a child of the dark. It does not grow in full brightness. It needs room to stretch, to distort, to play. This is why artists, philosophers, and scientists alike often describe inspiration as arriving in quiet, in solitude, in stillness, in the moments before sleep. The brain, no longer constrained by incoming light, becomes expansive. The prefrontal cortex releases its grip. The boundaries between thoughts soften. Associations rise uninvited. Insight, like bioluminescence, emerges when it is dark enough to see it. Even fear, that ancient guardian, is shaped by darkness, not because the dark is dangerous, but because it removes certainty. In the absence of visual confirmation, the brain imagines. And imagination is powerful, but even here fear has a function. It sharpens the mind, it primes the body, it calls forth memory and analysis. Fear, at its root, is a spark of cognition, the brain working to anticipate what it cannot yet see. In this way, the dark doesn't paralyze thinking, it deepens it. The brain, then, is not merely a daylight machine. It is a darkness symphony. Its earliest networks arose not in sight but in shadow. Its rhythms follow the ebb of night. Its creativity blooms in silence. And its deepest processes, dreaming, memory, intuition, flourish in the absence of light. So the next time you feel the dark around you, let it be a signal, not a threat. Let it remind you that the mind was made for this, that your thoughts carry ancient rhythms, that your memories are shaped by the same quiet that shaped the neurons of early worms and fish and mammals, that your brain, glowing softly behind your eyes, is not afraid of the dark, it was born from it. And perhaps this is the final gift of the night, that it returns us to ourselves, that in its folds we are not diminished but deepened, not blinded but invited inward. The darkness outside is a mirror to the darkness within, a space not of emptiness but of potential. You are not lost in the dark. You are unfolding within it. Now let us float gently toward the closing thoughts of this journey, through the corridors of night where thought began not with light but with longing. For what is a brain if not a map of unanswered questions, a pattern sculpted by things not yet seen? Darkness did not simply shape the brain, it gave it purpose. In the absence of vision, the mind became curious. In the quiet, it became reflective. It turned inward, then outward, and in that turning it became more than a cluster of cells. It became aware. Even now, the brain's most essential functions still unfold under cover of night. Repair, consolidation, dreaming, insight all emerge when the world quiets. Sleep is not idleness. It is evolution's most brilliant system of recalibration. The brain, during its deepest rest, is hard at work. It processes emotion, strengthens learning, trims away what is no longer needed. And yet it does all this in silence, without spectacle, without light. But even awake, the traces remain. Our minds still depend on darkness in subtle ways. A dim room invites reflection. A shadow across the floor stirs memory. The fading of day softens our speech, loosens our thoughts, prepares us to imagine. Darkness gently lowers the volume of the outer world, allowing the inner world to speak. And the brain, having always known this balance, responds as if returning home. This relationship with darkness is not merely neurological, it is existential. The great questions that occupy our thoughts, who am I? Where did I come from? What lies beyond? Are not born under fluorescent lamps. They emerge in the hush between moments, in the tremble before sleep, in the midnight silence where the boundaries blur. The brain was shaped by darkness not just in structure, but in spirit. And this spirit, this quiet searching, is universal. Across cultures, the night has long been a time for vision. Not the vision of eyes, but the vision of insight. Mystics, monks, poets, dreamers, they all turn to the dark not in fear, but in reverence. Not to escape life, but to understand it. And the brain, with its chambers and currents, was ready. It too was built to listen when the world was quiet. It too was built to wonder when the stars came out. Modern life has tried to outshine the dark. Cities blaze with artificial suns. Screens follow us into our beds. Sleep is pushed aside. Reflection is rushed. But the brain remembers. It still craves rhythm, not only the day but the night. Not only the clarity of vision but the blur of imagination. We have not outgrown the dark. We have only forgotten how to be still in it. When you dim the lights and close your eyes, your brain does not power down. It opens, it softens, it begins to rebuild. And what it rebuilds is not only memory but meaning. The world is reassembled in dreams. Emotions are untangled. Thoughts are rehearsed. Problems are solved without effort. And the next day we wake not with new sight but with deeper seeing. In this way, the darkness becomes not absent but teacher. It slows time. It expands thought. It allows space between stimulus and response. And that space, that tiny breath, is where choice lives, where reflection lives, where growth begins. Light may reveal the world, but darkness gives us the tools to shape it. And perhaps this is why some of our most profound moments happen when the lights go out. The comfort of a hand in the dark, the hush of a night shared in silence, the way music sounds fuller when you close your eyes, the way grief softens and joy deepens in the quiet of night. The brain, relieved of its need to track the visible, begins to feel more fully. Even in fear, darkness has shaped resilience. In the dark, we imagine monsters, but to imagine them is also to confront them. Children dream of shadows and wake with courage. Adults face uncertainty and rise with insight. The brain has learned not only to endure the dark, but to grow from it. In not knowing, we become explorers. In not seeing, we become seekers. And so, as you settle into darkness, real or metaphorical, know that you are not regressing. You are returning to a space that your mind knows well, a space of origin, of transformation, of restoration. The dark is not what the brain escapes from. It is what the brain was born through. In its folds lie the songs of memory, the rhythm of sleep, the silence of intuition. The brain, like the stars above us, was shaped not only by light but by what light could not reach. And in that unreachable space, it found its purpose. So the next time the power goes out, or the moon hides behind clouds, or your thoughts drift into shadow, do not rush to fill the gap. Let it be. Let the quiet rise. Let the inner world unfold. For it is in that space, free from glare, that the brain reveals its true brilliance. You were not made for light alone. You were made for both, the sun that guides and the dark that grows. And in that darkness, the brain still glows.